computer. Okay, so little smile. This is why I didn't need a headshot from you. This will be your headshot. Oh, and I always do, oh, look at Lisa. Okay, and then I always do kind of shake. And I'm always curious with what people are going to do when I do this. And I go, Lisa, get ready, get ready. What would you do? What would you do? Okay.
Get grounded.
Yes. Eden. Just be spiritual, boom. And Lisa knows I would like for her to say hello before I pontificate a little bit. Hello. Please say hello to the listeners and to the watchers.
Well, hello to you.
Thank you. And to them and to all of y'all.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm excited to be here. Talk to all your listeners.
Yes, thank you so much for being here as well. All right, so quick little thing. Okay, so we're recording on March 15th, 2023. And I want to share these little tidbits knowing that I am in Ohio right now. I just heard from someone that I really trust that the train wreck in East Palestine, which is an hour and 15 minutes from me, is an attempt at a land grab, which is very interesting, that the toxicity is fake and the dead fish are fake. So take that in, let that settle a little bit, even the possibility of it. And then I also heard that Mother Earth, which I believe is a living, breathing entity, that, you know, lakes and streams and all that is like the blood of her, that she is, in a sense, fighting back with some of these things that are happening to her. So that's very exciting as well. So let me throw out those little things. And then I just want to give a heads up on my next two guests, not to diminish Lisa, because we are about to get into some exciting stuff. So April and Jay from Spiritually Raw will be here on the next show. And then Michael LaFlemme, who has written a book on Atlantis. He is in Mexico currently and such an interesting guy. So I have to throw out these little tidbits. He was an atheist before he started writing this book, very a scholarly guy. So this just threw him into way more. He also has a connection with Kanye West, which is really interesting as well. Okay, so some fun stuff. So Lisa, before I read your corporate bio, I'm going to give a couple little nuggets because we're going to talk about all of this today. All right, so we're going to go into being suicidal and attempting to use traditional therapists, which did not work, which led you into hypnotherapy. Potentially, I'm going to throw out all these things. I don't know if we're going to talk about all of them. Your 30-year divorce, channeling shamanism, studying with master teachers and indigenous tribes around the world, walking on fire. Okay, Lisa Schermerhorn, did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Has over 20 years of experience as a transformational leader, author of the best-selling book, And Every Belief is a Lie. She is an expert in the fields of human behavior, leadership, and personal development. She is an award-winning speaker, having been in talks at Harvard, Columbia University, and featured in Blue Talks as a speaker. She has also, this is so yummy, been outspoken in the truther community, hence the Lewis Herms Truther Tour. And we've had a lot of truthers on, which is awesome. She also trained in winner's mindset with Bob Reese, the former head trainer for the New York Jets, and helped a professional golfer win Golfer of the Year. A little bit more. Lisa was VP of Business Development for an innovative startup company using virtual reality to help clients with pain reduction, memory loss, and stress reduction. As a certified hypnotherapist and master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, she helps can I talk? She helps entrepreneurs and high performers from where they are to where they want to be faster than conventional coaches. Explosive results, pow, pow, pow. She moves into that, being trained as a why coach, and we'll talk about some of this today, helping people discover their why based on Simon Sinek's Know Your Why. Lisa not only helps individuals discover their why, and she also helps people discover the why of their business and how to use that in branding, which, knowing I come from an advertising background, this is lovely. She lives in Vermont currently with 2 feet of snow, with grown children and her rescue dog, Lily. Okay. how is the snow? We talked about this briefly before we got on air.
Right. We just got 2 feet of snow. It's still
Man.
snowing on top of the other foot of snow that we had.
Okay. Oh, and was that Lily right back
Yes,
there?
that was Lily.
Hello.
Yeah, I rescued her at the age of 10, and she's almost 14 now. So she's amazing. She's my
Very
baby.
nice.
Yeah.
And can you tell folks too, like you just suffered a concussion? Talk about that and the healing that you just had, which is so incredible.
Yeah, so I live at a ski mountain in Vermont, and right before we got all the snow, it was a little icy, but it was a Monday. It was a beautiful sunny day, and I went skiing with a friend. And I like to say that I fell on a black diamond or something really treacherous, but of course I was down at the bottom of the mountain passing a 5-year-old in a snowplow. I have no idea what happened, but I landed back and hit the back of my head. Luckily, I had a helmet on, smacked my head, and my knee blew up huge.
Ooh.
So I've been dealing with that for about 5 weeks, and my concussion wasn't really getting better, so I went to see an energy worker. And for those of people who do martial arts, there's something called the hara line, which is where the line that runs through your body, the center, and it goes all the way down to the center of the earth and to the great central sun. It's what grounds you and sends you energy. And if you are connected, deeply connected with that, it's hard for you to be moved. It keeps you grounded. So my hara line, she checked, was 6 inches to the right of me.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get hit really hard, you can get knocked out of your energy field. My aura, which is supposed to be 3 feet above me, around like a big egg, was actually at my chest.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So she spent about 2 hours moving everything back. So that was on Monday. And that what happens is, with any thought or anything physical, the longer you wait, it's harder. You have to move everything back because you're creating a new belief system. You're creating something new. So she said to me, I wish you would come to me right away. And I was like, I was so focused on my knee,
Right.
that the concussion wasn't even an issue. And as my knee's gotten better, I'm like, oh, I'm thinking clearly.
Oh my goodness. And this was someone you hadn't been to her before?
Long time ago.
Oh, wow.
I'm a firm believer in manifestation
Mm-hmm.
and praying and asking. So that morning I said, I've been kind of paralyzed on where to go. Do I go to an orthopedic surgeon? Do I go to a chiropractor? Do I go to an energy worker? I just was like, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
So I said a prayer and asked for a sign. I went into my friend's gallery, and there was this woman who's an energy worker who I hadn't done anything with in over 5 years. And I was like,
Oh,
this is where I start.
isn't that so great?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, continued healing for you. And thank you again. So, like, we talked yesterday briefly, and I'm like, Lisa, do you feel comfortable being on the podcast with everything that's happened? And you're like, yes, let's go.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
thank
I'm
you.
still working, still seeing clients. It's interesting. It's also a sign to know that when you're channeling, because when I work with people, everything comes in and everything is perfect. And then I stop with my client, and then all of a sudden
Then you're like, oh,
I go into that fishbowl.
oh my goodness. Okay, awesome. Hey, can you start out by how did you become connected to the Truth Tour, which is so interesting because there are people all over the United States that have become involved. You're the first person in Vermont that I know of. So how did you become connected to everybody?
So this is a really cool story. When COVID first started happening, I had a bunch of friends, and we got together and we were like, something's not right here. Like, we knew something wasn't right, but we didn't know what it was. And we saw these mandates coming down. And I started watching Dr. Christiane Northrup, and she was part of something called Maine Stands Up. And every day I would watch her, and she would inspire me. And so a group of us got together and we formed Vermont Stands Up. And every 2 weeks, we would take turns meeting in my living room and my friend's living room across the state. And people would drive 2 hours because we needed community and we wanted to know how we could take action. So then sometimes it was just a spiritual meeting where we just did guided meditations and held hands and just cried together because people were being ostracized from their family. They didn't know, what to do. So we created this community.
So how was your state? How did your state respond to all of this too? Like
Oh,
what were you living in?
We're Bernie country. It's very, very, very far left. So I was watching Michael Jaco. For any of you who know him, he's a big truther out of Florida. And I was watching his show and he had a guest on named Kevin Hoyt. And I was watching him and he was talking about how he was from Vermont and he was running for governor. And I was like, wait a minute, I've never heard of him. And we have been really involved in the community and started to, really look at our politicians, and he never came up. I didn't know that name. So I contacted him. And at the end of his podcast, he said, I get thousands of emails, so I often don't see them. Please don't get offended if I don't get back to you. So I was like, on a wing and a prayer, I sent him an email and I put in the headline, fellow Vermonters. He contacted me the next day. He said, I need to see you. He said, I'm going to be in Burlington this weekend, because he lived in Southern Vermont. When on my way back, could we meet? I said, well, I'm going to be in New Hampshire visiting my daughter. So we're going to be coming opposite directions. If things work out, it'll be perfect. So I was on the highway and I got a call. Said, where are you? I said, I'm near the Montpelier exit. He said, so am I. Get off.
Oh my gosh. Right.
So I get off and then he goes, are you in a white car? And I'm like, all right, this is creepy. I don't know this guy. So he follows me and we stopped at a coffee shop. And it was a place where everyone was mandated to wear masks. And we walked in without masks and sat down and had a conversation. And I told him I'm in this process of writing a book about, and every belief is a lie. If you look at the word belief, LIE is in the middle of it. And it's all about how we're programmed. And so I was telling him about this. And I said, do you happen to know Dr. Northrup? I would love to connect to her. I don't know how to get in touch with her. He said, your message is really important. I want to get you on Michael Jaco's show. I said, get out of here. He goes, I'm going to see what I can do. He called me up the next weekend. He said, I've done something better. I got you on a show with Michael Jaco and Dr. Northrup.
Oh my gosh. Nice.
So the three of us got on and we had a ball. We laughed. We had so much fun on that show. And then from there, Kevin said, I'm buddies with this guy, Lewis Herms. He's starting this truth tour. I think you need to be part of it. And he connected me with Lewis. We did a Zoom call from my phone when in the car. And he's like, I like your energy. I want you on it. And, I felt like I was on this train that was just moving, and I just got on it because everything was aligning in ways that I never imagined. I still, like, people laugh and it's like, oh, I saw you on this Truth Tour podcast and this podcast. And I was just sitting in a log home in Vermont, minding my own business. But the taking of action, creating community. So that group of 25 people turned into a group over 1,500.
Oh.
And we have one group of people that is very action oriented and is all about watching our legislature and seeing what bills are being put up and sending out information to our community. Then we have other people who are about community and how to be of service to each other and meet, and we meet monthly and everyone has a chance to just talk about their frustration and their feelings and how much the community means to them.
And this is total aside, I would love to join you guys. Can someone who's not in Vermont just show up?
Well, we meet on, I don't see why not.
I would just love to see y'all.
The meetings are open to anyone, but they're in person.
Oh, they are in person.
Yeah,
okay.
We have some that are in person. I also got involved with Simon Park's group, Connecting Consciousness.
Yes.
And It was really funny because Mark Adams, who was running our Vermont division for a while, is actually stepbrother, with Sasha Stone.
Oh my gosh.
I know. What are the
All
odds?
these connections.
I know. His mother was married to Sasha Stone's father, and they share a sister in common. And I was like,
Oh my God. And Simon Parks was actually who I was talking about today in terms of talking about the train wreck in Ohio. So
yeah.
I do really trust that man because, again, in terms of who you trust, there's so much, you know, there might be someone that, oh, this seems good. And then they're just on the dark side, if you want to call it that.
Well, they're
So much
also, for
wackiness.
instance, when I was in Anaheim at the Truth Tour and I
Yeah.
spoke there, and Juan O'Savin was there. And
Mhm.
when I was in Las Vegas, I had the opportunity to sit with Juan O'Savin. And for those of you who don't know him, I really see him in costume. He's got prosthetic everything and blue contact lenses. He hides his identity. So there's a lot of people who try and figure out who he truly is. But I had the honor of sitting with him for an hour in Las Vegas talking to him. And he's brilliant and has incredible amounts of information. But at Anaheim, he set us all down and said, there's important information that you need to know. Trump is going to be arrested, and you need to let your viewers know. And a lot of the people who have big followings lost a lot of credibility over that because people put it out there and then it didn't happen. So sometimes we always wonder, are they giving us this information intentionally because we're at war and the enemy needs, to be thrown off too?
Yes.
It's hard to know who to trust. So I always say I a la carte people, and there are people who I've followed for a long time and suddenly don't resonate with me. And then I find someone else that I suddenly resonate with until I don't resonate with them anymore. So it's an interesting ride. One of the greatest things that we
to say the least. Okay.
Yeah. No. So one of the things that we have to do as humanity is to discern and make our own decisions for ourselves. Because just because the New York Times says something or CNN says something, we need to go inward and say, is that really true? And when I first started on this journey, I did my research. I didn't take anyone's, word for it. I watched C-SPAN and I would watch Trump's speeches. And then I would look at the New York Times, the Huffington Post, the Washington Post, and read the articles about his speech. And I was dumbfounded because I was like, who watched this speech? Because apparently the author of this article did not. And the more I watched, the more I saw the inconsistencies and the just blatant lies, and that people don't do their homework. They just take for granted what they hear. And the programming, and here's something that's really interesting. As a hypnotist, and I talk about how we're programmed, the televisions, all the smart TVs, all of our computers, our phones we're sending out signals that they had these satellites up in the sky called the Voice of God that was sending messages to people. And what happened, I found this out because I was driving to Massachusetts and I was on the highway and I saw these highway signs that flash and it said, go get your COVID vaccine. And I literally had a voice in my head so compelling that I was fighting my steering wheel. I was in the left-hand lane and it was trying to literally get me to get off the highway to go get that. And then 5 miles later, it happened again. And it made me so angry because when I realized, I was like, what just happened to me? And then a month later, I was listening to Cliff High, and Cliff High was talking about this voice of God and how it was programming and sending this information. So in a place of compassion, like, thank God I have an understanding of the subconscious mind, so that I had an understanding of what was happening there. And I knew it wasn't my voice. But there are people who said that they ended up at a CVS or a Walgreens or whatever, and they didn't even know how they got there or why they were there.
Every week to me, I learn something new that it just flabbergasts me even more. And I saw something, Lisa, on one of my Telegram channels that I look at, basically how memes are also geometrically programmed. So when you see it, there's so much more to it as well, that it goes
Huh.
into your subconscious. So there is so much, I would say, within this world that really is not real. How would you categorize that? I mean, it is real, yet there's so much more to it. What would you say to that? Is that
Well,
even making
here's the
sense?
interest. Yes. Here's the interesting thing. And now I get to put my metaphysical hat on too. I get
Fabulous.
my business, my metaphysical hat, and my truther hat. This is so exciting to put them all together in one
I know,
place.
and let me go ahead and mention that one of the reasons you were excited, I guess, to be on here is you can bring all of them, all of these components together, because that I love all of that. So thank you so much for sharing and being comfortable for sharing all of that with us. All right.
Yeah, it becomes a problem for me in my business world. I
Yep.
had someone who Googled me and saw one of the
Yep. I get
Michael
it.
Jaco, and he's like, I looked up this guy, and he's like a neo-Nazi extremist,
Uh,
right wing, and I don't know if I want to work with you. And so I responded to him. First of all, there's a lot of information that's out about people that's not true.
mhm.
Number two, you've had a chance to talk to me. Do you honestly think that I'm neo-Nazi? First of all, I'm Jewish. And I said, third, this has nothing to do with politics or my own personal beliefs. This is about you getting better. So if you want to improve and you want to get better, I'd love to work with you. If you don't, then you can find someone else. And he
So,
ended up working with me.
oh, that's great. That's great.
But it was scary. It
Yeah.
is scary to put yourself out there because
Mhm.
I've been under the radar. So anyway, going back to, so here's through over 20 years of going back to being suicidal, going from conventional therapist to therapist 3 times a week. No one was helping me.
So
Someone
can I
suggested,
ask
yep.
you why you were feeling that way? What had happened?
Sure. So what happened was, as a child in kindergarten, my mother sent me to school a year early. So I was a year
Hmm.
earlier than everyone else, and I had undiagnosed learning disabilities. So everyone was reading, everyone was writing, everyone was doing their math, and I was lost. And instead of staying back and diagnosing me, but all I have to say, thank God it wasn't today, because they would have put me on so many drugs back then
Oh,
as a child. They would have had me on Ritalin and
yeah.
everything else. So what happened was I just spent every summer in summer school getting very mediocre grades and really struggling in school. So this belief that I was programmed, I took this on, that I was stupid.
Hmm.
And so I proceeded to give my power away to everyone I thought was smarter than me, which was pretty much everyone. I married young. I was married for 29 years, and I raised 2 beautiful children. But what happened was, after 20 years of marriage, I had this breakdown. Actually, it was 10, because it was 20 years. Yeah, 10, 15 years. I had this breakdown and I was lost. I was completely lost. I had no sense of self. I didn't want to be here. I didn't understand my purpose. And I was struggling. And someone suggested a hypnotist. And I went. And what happens is,
So
right
were you
now,
like, oh yeah, I'll give that a try, or just I've
oh
done all
no,
these other things? Yeah.
I was like, don't they make people quack like a duck?
You're
Like, I
so
was so skeptical.
skeptical.
But I was desperate. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'll try anything.
Yeah, and that's why people come see me. Same thing. I'm desperate. I've tried everything else. So
Yeah.
I'll give you a go.
Yeah. So what happened for me was, I tried it and I started feeling better. And then I was like, I want to be like her. And she started talking about, she'd also trained in Angel Messenger and
Yeah.
Doreen Virtue kind of stuff. So she was studying mediumship and she was studying all these things. I was like, I want to study with all the people you've studied with.
Oh,
So I went on to study hypnosis because of her mediumship, psychic development. And then I realized that I couldn't be her. I had to figure out who I was.
mhm.
So from there, I went on I've had a lot of miracles happen in my life where I've been guided, and got guided into shamanism, and I went there kicking and screaming because that was not what I was like, I'm this Jewish girl from New Jersey. Who does that? That's like a jungle thing. And, aren't they like witch doctors? Like, I didn't understand it.
Right.
But I got pulled into it and ended up studying with tribes in Costa Rica, in the jungle, in Peru. I've been all over working with indigenous tribes. I've been to Italy and mystery schools, lots of crazy stories of miracles that have happened in my life.
All right. So let me ask you this.
Yep.
In terms of people, like, what did you do before all of this? Were you a stay-at-home mom? Did you have a career per
I
se?
started out in the fashion industry. I started out in, I was an assistant buyer in a department store, and then I moved to New York City and went to work for a manufacturer. I don't know if you remember Liz Claiborne.
Yes.
Worked for them, and then another company called Chouse. And my boss at Chouse would come in every couple of weeks. We had to be at work by 7, had to leave, couldn't leave before 7 at night, couldn't take a lunch.
Oh
We
my
had to sit at
gosh.
our desk. They let us order our lunches in. The company paid for it. He would come in and take a bite of our sandwiches and put it down, stick his hand in your fries, take a bite. And I
Ew.
remember, it was such an abusive relationship at that company, all the people who worked there. And I realized that I didn't share the same values. There, we don't have enough to, the word escapes me, but not a good person, not a good businessman, just really, really scummy man.
Yeah, it sounds horrible.
It was terrible. And I ended up getting fired. And thank God, because there were things that I didn't want to do, that it was asked to lie, and I couldn't do it anymore. Long story. So I left. And then I went to work for my father's company in a specialty metals industry. I was all over the place.
Wow.
And then I just decided, I was a mom, worked part-time, got involved, got on a lot of boards, and did a lot of work, just being of service in the community. And that's when I had that breakdown, and then opened a wellness center in my community, and people would come in and they go, do you have a back entrance? Because I don't want anyone to see me coming in here, because I was a Reiki master, and I did hypnosis, and they were afraid that what people would judge them. And I was like, how do you expect me to stay in business if you're not willing to let other people know about what I do?
All right, so let's talk about that for
Yeah.
just a moment as we go into shamanism, because I do a lot of shamanistic type work as well. What I want to proclaim, especially right now, is this stuff that we used to see as woohoo stuff. This is the stuff that works, and we are not woohoo. Like, I'm sitting here going, I'm not woohoo. I might do things that are considered out of the box, but as time progresses and we move into this great awakening, into this golden age, everyone's going to see that this is the real stuff. Lisa is the real stuff. All right. So when you went into that shaman study, you went and quit kicking and screaming. What did you discover from that?
So this was the interesting thing.
Yeah.
When I was studying hypnosis, the woman who was my teacher was also psychic.
Yes.
And she used to use these divining rods. She would use these rods, and she would communicate. And so one day she's like, oh, your spirit guide's here. I'm like, what? Native American, 6'2", high cheekbones, very handsome. He has a message for you. And I was like, my what? Like, I did. And then she said, he wants you to read a book. I'm like, what book? He wants you to read a book. So she looked all over the place. She left the room. The room was kind of dark, and there was a bookshelf just kind of like this. And when she left, a book literally illuminated across the room. Mm-hmm. I got up from my chair and I walked across, and I pulled this book off the shelf, and it said Soul Retrieval by Sandra Ingerman. So Pat walked back in, and she looked at me. She goes, that's the book. And I was like, so I read the book, and again, I go, that's nice. who does that? I don't resonate with that. And I gave it back to her. And then I was studying mediumship with this woman in Massachusetts, and someone in my class walked up to me and she said, I went to a health and wellness event last weekend, and there was a woman there who's a shaman who's looking for an apprentice, and something made me give this to you. So she hands me this card and I'm like, oh my God, take it. So I call this woman and I said, I don't know anything about this. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I need to, look into this. She said, okay, go do something for me. Go get a rosemary plant, and I want you to put it in your house, and I want you to meditate with it for an hour, write down what it says, and come meet with me. And I'm like, wait a minute. You want me to sit and talk to a plant and write down what the plant is telling me? Rosemary. So I did it, and I wrote pages and pages of notes. And I went to meet with her, and she's like, okay, I'll take you on. And that was the beginning of my journey. But you asked me a question earlier.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to that about our belief system, because one of the things that is very shamanic is about our connection to our ancestors. And science is now catching up to a lot of these things that we used to talk about, that those of us who are healers know at a deep core level, but I didn't always have the language or the science to back it up to be able to explain it. So there's something called epigenetics, which is the science of inherited trauma and beliefs. So they've actually done studies where they took mice and they had them smell a particular smell and give them a shock until they associated the smell with the shock. Their grandpups, whenever they smelled the smell, would run. We carry these beliefs in us through our DNA. I've worked with people going back up to 10 generations. So if you've had trauma, which, none of us have gotten out of this unscathed. If your ancestors have experienced trauma, that gets sent down through your DNA and it manifests in different ways. So what I do is I look at patterns. So you want to look at patterns in your family. Are there certain behaviors? Is there a lot of addiction in the family? Is there a certain mental illness that's throughout the family? That starts to, I'm a puzzle person, like I'm a detective. So I'm like, let's investigate which line of the family that we need to go in and clear. So I ask the subconscious mind, your higher wisdom, because it has the answers to everything, to go back to the root cause, the ancestor. And we heal that ancestor. We talk to that ancestor, and then we do forgiveness work. And then we go down to the next generation, talk to them, heal that ancestor, do forgiveness work, go down. And it's miraculous how that can work. For those of you who believe in reincarnation and past lives, we inherit belief systems through past lives. So if there was a trauma that happened in a past life, that can be passed on. And I had a fascinating, most people who have, who go through a past life experience, most people are not famous. If you think you're famous lifetime after lifetime, then I generally say I discount that. I can't say that that's not real. We don't know. But I had a woman who came to me who said, I'm obsessed with the 40s. I don't believe in hypnosis or any of this stuff, but I can't take it anymore because I don't know why. I have a farm in Vermont. All of my animals are named after 1940s movie stars, Clark Gable, Carol Lombard, Frank's, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers. She goes, I wear hats. I listen to 40s music. I have an obsession and my friends think I'm crazy. I want to find out the root cause. So we went back in hypnosis, and literally the whole time she's like, this isn't real. I'm making this up. This isn't real. I'm making this up. And during this time, she's like, I'm in the Hollywood Hills. I'm wearing this beautiful white sparkly bathing suit, and I'm in these white pumps. And now I'm at, Louis B. Mayer's office, and I see and suddenly I see myself in a blue convertible, and I'm in a car crash, and I see Clark Gable next to me. She's like, I'm just making this up. And we're getting down to her death scene, and she's like, I'm confused. I see myself dying in a plane crash, but then I also see myself in a car crash. I don't know how I died. I just made this up. She calls me that afternoon and she's like, you're never going to believe this.
And
I
I'm sure you're
looked,
like, yeah. Okay,
I
go ahead.
looked up Clark Gable and Carol Lombard. Carol Lombard was in a car crash in a blue convertible, and she died in a plane crash at the age of 33.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dog is sleeping there.
Oh, nice.
Um, but anyway, and I get these amazing confirmations every once in a while. So again, it's we do past lives. I go into ancestral as well as the issues that come in this lifetime.
So your client with the 40s obsession, did she understand it? Did it quelch her obsession, or she started to accept it? Did she
It
talk
was
about her
more,
outcome?
yeah, it was an accepting. It was
Okay.
an acceptance
An
because what
understanding.
happens is when a life especially is cut short, what happens is then there's trauma, the soul
Mhm.
experiences trauma. And so just touching on it and acknowledging it will help release a lot. Now, she probably still has her love of the 40s and all of that, but it's not obsessive anymore.
Right. It just is. And it makes more sense. So, Lisa, in a moment, she's going to do the Just Be practice for her. But before we get into that, knowing that through this great awakening, there is going to be so much of a shakeup in terms of who I am. What am I doing now? Everything that I thought was true is not so much. When you talk about helping someone find their why and knowing that this is going to be so important, can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So I'm a certified why coach, and it helps people discover their why, their how, and their what. They call it the why operating system.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting about that was it really helped me solidify and make me feel grounded in who I am, because as a child, I didn't think I was smart.
Mm-hmm.
What I realized was my why is challenge. And what that means is I challenge conventional thinking and think outside the box. I learn differently. Everything I do is different. So my why is to be different. Like the people who come to me, like you, they've tried everything else and now they're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is different, right? And then my how is better way. I'm always looking for a better way and sharing it. And then my what is the ability to make sense out of complicated situations and problems. So once I knew that, it also helps me with my branding and my marketing,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm different, I'm better, and I make sense out of complicated situations as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so it helped me better understand the type of people who I want to attract. Because when you go to marketing experts, they're going to tell you, oh, these are the people you should be marketing towards.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't know anything about me. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I'm marketing to someone who's very left brain, very structured, I'm going to scare the heck out of them. They're going to see my spirit guide over my shoulder and go, well, who the heck is that? And why should I be talking to her? But I want people who are entrepreneurs, business people, people who are more cutting edge and looking for something different and willing to try something. So that's the importance. So knowing that about yourself helps you own who you are at a deeper level. And getting into the red pilling, I'm very frustrated. I have people who I can red pill gently. You just find that one chink in the armor,
Mm-hmm.
just that one little bit, and then you can start kind of cracking that open. Let people sit with it, come back again, let them ask questions. But here's the one thing that I want people to understand, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who were disenfranchised, who were, left out of family events. And there are a lot of people who are truthers who are very angry. And I ask you to go into a place of forgiveness and compassion. Because imagine waking up, looking at what you've done to yourself, done to your children, done to people you love, and realize that you've been duped. Anyone who wants to beat on someone who's going through that, who knows that they may have shortened their own lifespan and what they have been, subjected to, don't you think that's enough punishment?
Yeah.
So I ask, you know, for those of us who are awake, to hold these people in your heart and have compassion, because there's a lot that they're going to have to deal with. We've had a couple of years to
Yep.
wake up and research, hours and hours, thousands of hours. These people are about to get hit over the head in ways that, and some people aren't going to make it because it's going to be too much for them. When my father, who prays to the God of the New York Times, finds out that he's been lied to,
Yeah.
I don't know how my 85-year-old father is going to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. And it's also understanding from a spiritual level that everything that's in front of us, the good, the evil, it's all us too. So for us to go, you people who don't believe, that is separating ourselves from
Right.
ourselves as well. So
Right.
we are all in this together. And that's a really, that's challenging, yet that's how it needs to be. And also talking about right now is the time for people to open up to these traumas, to heal themselves. That's what all of this is about as well. So I am so grateful for you. Not only like I feel, and it is like putting yourself out there. What is this going to mean for my business? Yet this is who I am. I cannot not talk about things. I cannot,
Right.
because it is so real and it is so true and it is spiritual, and everything. I'm just going to talk for a second. Everything I do is about spirit and about evolution and advancing yourself. So to separate it again, I don't have a new client come in going, hey, let's, like, I'll talk about the great awakening from a spiritual aspect, and then if someone feels comfortable about going into more, I'm like, this is not political, yet it is political because it affects our politics, it affects our finances, it affects every component of our lives. So folks like you, I am like, and especially in the spiritual community, I'm sure you have many compadres that have no idea that this is going on. My
No.
original teacher of 6 years, I connected with her, and I'm thinking she's in Vermont now. And she had no idea about any of this. And I was so shocked. And she asked me, Eden, are you an anti-vaxxer? And I'm like, I wouldn't call myself that. So yeah, it was really interesting to be confronted with someone that I had so much respect for, that again, she's deep, had no clue
Right.
that
No,
any of this was going
I've
on.
lost one of my teachers with
Oh,
a shaman that I went to Peru for 23 days with, and went to Costa
whoa.
Rica. She ended up in the hospital and they gave her remdesivir. Her
Oh,
organs shut down. They killed her. They killed her. For those of you who don't know about remdesivir,
thank you for
the
bringing that up.
nickname is called Run Deathasnir. And that was the protocol from Fauci that forced these hospitals to only use that. And it had a 60 or 70% degree of death, shutting down people's kidneys and organs. And that was what was killing them. And the hospitals were getting paid per COVID death and per intubation and per diagnosis. So every time if someone came in with a heart attack, their death was about COVID, so that they could get paid. And they got paid anywhere between $30,000 and $100,000 per COVID death.
Now that I didn't know.
Yes,
Oh,
there's a list
oh my
of
gracious.
states and
Oh,
hospitals that I saw that made me sick. So I want people to understand how deep this goes. And nurses, I met a nurse last weekend who lost her job and is homeless because she refused to vaccinate, and she refused to get vaccinated, and had to start all over again, and
oh,
literally ended up on the street. I mean, I don't think I didn't have that courage. There are a lot of people who have had that kind of courage to stand on on their principles like that, and I applaud those people, because man, I don't know that I could do that. I don't know that I have that in me,
well, do you,
to be homeless, to literally
yes,
sacrifice that much, to be
yeah, right.
homeless, to sacrifice everything. I wouldn't have gotten vaccinated, but I would have done, who knows,
Mhm.
I'm not in that position, so I don't know.
Right. And do you work out of your home? Is your studio?
I work out of my home and then I see people in person. But here was the other thing. I had a hypnosis practice and I was seeing people in 3 different towns. And
Oh,
suddenly overnight, I went from in person to shutting down those 3 offices. And suddenly like I had no clients. And suddenly people were open to being online on Zoom, and it changed my practice, and it allowed me to see people all over the world and really expand my speaking, expand everything. I mean, I owe everything in the positive way to COVID because it's transformed my life. I wouldn't have what I have today because of it. So for many people, when we talk about the Great Awakening, it has opened up. But I think about 10 years ago, I met a fellow who was talking to me about 9/11. I used to live in New Jersey. And my ex-husband was at 9/11, not a 9/11. He was at Ground Zero for the first time in 93 when they tried to take the towers down and people died. And he left and got out of there. And then we moved to Pennsylvania. But I lost people from that community who worked downtown. So I was too close to it. So when this friend of mine told me what he believed at the time to be true about 9/11 and being an inside job, I stood up and told him to go do something and wouldn't speak to him. And then years later, when all of the, COVID information and this Great Awakening, I realized what he was telling me was true. I called him and apologized. But I think about the people who right now who weren't ready for this information. And I think about the people who have been awake for 20 years and having to sit on all this and watch. It's astonishing, how they've had it. I in certain ways, I thank God that I wasn't awake that long because I don't know how I could have dealt with it.
Yeah, I totally get you on that. Like David Icke has known for a long time, and my mentor has known probably for about 20 to 30 years. And she was the one that basically said when COVID started striking up, it's like she whispered in my ear, hey, COVID isn't actually about COVID. And that completely opened me up into, like, I started researching a whole bunch of my own because I totally respected her because she is a very spiritual goddess. So yeah, I can't, because for us, let's put it that way, these past couple of years have been tough, and to watch and to imagine doing that longer. I'm with you. I don't know if my heart could have taken it, or because it's tough right now, and to stay balanced and to try and stay neutral through it all and loving and caring.
Right.
It's good for us.
It's true. So for me, being able to walk this world of working with people and integrating all of this, and to be able to pink pill someone and walk away. I red pilled an anesthesiologist in Costa Rica.
Oh my gosh.
Who's now walking away from medicine.
Wow.
It's because she said, I knew something wasn't right. I knew something wasn't right. I didn't know what it was. And she was fully vaccinated.
Oh my gosh.
But she's like, I introduced her to someone else in Costa Rica. I said, there are things that you can use to detox your body. I'm not a medical professional. I always say Dr. Christiane Northrup has a website who she's a doctor, has protocols. There are other people who sell products. I don't want to get involved in that just because that's not my, my area of expertise. But yeah, and shedding is a real problem too. I've worked with people who have had to deal with that. And I can't imagine being married and having your spouse being, not awake, and you being awake, and then dealing with your children and whether or not to vaccinate, and they want to go to school and be with their friends and not understanding. Hats up to you, moms and dads, who have had to deal with COVID over the past 3 years with children. My kids are grown, and I cannot, and they are adults. They made decisions that I wasn't particularly happy with, but they were adults and they made their own informed choices. But if it were under my roof, I don't know how I would have had to deal with that.
Well, I'll have to add on to that. I've talked about this before. So my divorce happened during the lockdown. So I prompted the divorce, asked for it 3 weeks before we were all at home, both the kids.
Wow.
husband. And then this dramatic divergence of me being awake and him completely not being awake. Like, even to imagine being under the same roof at this point, like the divorce was magical that it happened right at that time. So I got
Yeah.
to move away from all this. All right. I just, because of time, I want to go ahead and move us into the practice. I think, Lisa, you were going to do something focusing on grounding. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And
So, yeah.
thank you for everything that you've spoken about as well. Beautiful, lovely. Okay, let's proceed into this more loveliness. Thank you. We're taking a little
Well,
bit.
Just be
this
practice.
technique was taught to me by my friend who passed away during COVID, and I want to share this all with you. It's a beautiful grounding technique where you imagine that there's a cord the width of your hips, and you want to close your eyes and take a deep breath, and you want to send this cord through the floor, through your basement, into the bedrock, and just send this cord all the way deep down into the center of the earth. And in the center of the earth, there's this beautiful green, emerald green liquid. And this is this beautiful earth, green earth energy. And we're going to use that cord as a straw, and it's going to bring up this beautiful green earth energy. And it now enters the base of your spine. And for you women who are listening, you bring it into your female creative energy. So it's your uterus, your fallopian tubes. That's your female creative energy. So you want to ground that. And with men, you want to fill your male creative energy in the areas of what we call the second chakra. And then bring that energy down the back of your legs, into your knees, down your calves, into your ankles, and out into your toes, and feel free to grow roots from your toes into the earth. And then take a deep breath, and now you can gently open your eyes.
That was very simple, yet very powerful.
Grounding is going to be very important for us going through these next days with bank collapsing, with all of the news that's going to come at us. And, we're in transition into new times. So staying grounded and being able to deal with that. And the way to tell you're ungrounded is when your head starts spinning and you go into fear. It's like, take that energy and bring it down and go hug a tree. If you go and meditate by a tree, put your back to one, they recycle for you. So ask them to take the negative energy from you and recycle it and transmute it. They love being of service and helping us.
And let me add onto that. Y'all know I have a new grounding mat in my studio, grounding blanket on my bed, grounding pillow. So bring it on. Lisa, so great. In fact, I can just say goodbye to you personally when we finish up. Is there anything else that you want to impart? I love the part, but again, nature is available and easy for everyone during this period of time. And just like you said, love to be a part of all of us.
Right.
And I think just having us connect to it right now is so important through all this as well.
I had a reminder this morning. I had a good cry because when I saw all the news of everything that's happening around with banks collapsing, and thinking about my heart going out to all the people who are terrified right now. And I started to take it all on, and I had to remind myself that we are all here for life's lessons. We all chose to be here at this time, and we are here for our different roles. And even
for our different roles.
We're all here for our own different roles. We're all here for our own healing. And so we need to honor the fact and hold boundaries and let people go through their process and know that we are exactly where we're supposed to be. And I had to be reminded of that this morning. And even though I know, I don't know, right? in every belief is a lie. We think we know what's happening, but we're not going to know everything. There's a lot that's going on in this universe and the world that we're going to find out a lot more.
Oh, and won't
So
that be
stay open.
exciting? Yeah, stay open.
Yes.
All right, brothers and sisters, that was everybody. That was amazing. Okay, stay with me, Lisa. Thank you. See y'all
Thank
later. And
you.
hear y'all later. So cool of you to be here. I went from being off most social media to being on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Truth Social, and you might be watching this on YouTube, Rumble, or BitChute. Or you might be listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I'm on over 19 directories at this point. So connect, comment, subscribe, like. Oh, and my intention is to have a new episode out Wednesday of each week. Oh, Lordy, more to come.